I'm excited that I'm in a little bit different setting. It's fun to be able to be mobile in this process. We are in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. It's a gorgeous fall day, and this is now our makeshift studio. It works out great. I have been. First of all, again, thank you for everyone coming up and saying that they love the podcast. That keeps me encouraged, and it also wants me to really dig deep and find topics that are relevant and important. And this came to me a few days ago, and really I think it was built on the foundation of the past several weeks. Little comments that are made by people that made me think about the reality of, to be successful, you have to pay your dues. I know for Jeff and I can speak to the reality that we have paid our dues. That for 25 years for me and 20 plus years now of us together, the road has not been easy. There were plenty of times where we were doing things that we thought, is this accomplishing anything? Are we crazy? Are we making progress? And sometimes when you feel like you're not making progress, it's because you're somehow thinking that you need to, part of your job is to measure what you're doing in your activity. And that could just be, that honestly could not be farther from the truth. In one of the we have a document that we put together for every new face that comes around, and a huge part of what that document states, to one degree or another, is to trust the journey, to know that this is not a measurable pursuit, even if you try to make it measurable, and that if you get caught up in that thing, it'll kill it. It will kill it. There were things along the journey that Jeff and I did, one being, if there was a most notable, although I'm sure if I thought about it, there's probably way more than one, was we produced a DVD called Model Truth when Blockbuster was still around. Let's just put it in that relativity, and that people were watching DVDs. And we had always felt that we had a lot to say, and that we wanted to help more aspiring models, because we would get so frustrated that we saw so many in the process going down the journey in every wrong possible way. So we financed to the degree that we could. We borrowed some money. We bootstrapped it. We shot it. We helped the process of editing. And then we invested in 3,000 DVDs that we were convinced were going to fly off the shelf. And the reality is, by the time we moved from our house 2 years ago down into Midtown Alley, we were moving. When we initially started, we had 3,000 DVDs, and I think we were moving like 2,700 boxes of DVDs. But I still believe that it was part of our process, that we learned a lot in it. I didn't see it as a failure. I saw it as part of the journey that got us to this point. It was part of paying our dues. It was part of learning, of skinning our knee and getting back up. Every success story that I know that has any weight to it has had a process where they had to pay their dues. So when a young model comes to us who says things like, I've been doing this 3 years and I'm not where I thought I should be, and so I'm done, it borders on being laughable, because, maybe the goal, maybe part of your journey is that it's going to take you 5 years to get there. Or maybe you have a project that you're working on that you thought would be farther along, or that you would be at a different level at a certain time. I can't tell you how many times through the decades that Jeff and I experienced that. I'm so thankful that we didn't let some ambiguous, weird timeline that we had or that other people had somehow define what success was or what our journey was supposed to be. I'm glad we paid our dues. When I think of the models that we have that have had longevity, that are still doing really well, I can tell you that they have in the process paid their dues. I think of somebody like Myla Dalbesio, who her goal of Sports Illustrated was a goal that was at least a decade before it happened. And it happened. What if she would have stopped before then? What if you stop right on the heels of your destiny? And what if part of the journey is that you are supposed to have that be part of what's going to get you to where you need to be? I can look back and say with all sincerity that some of the hugest disappointments professionally for Jeff and I ended up being something that we were thankful for, grateful for. It gave us a different perspective. We learned in the process, and even though the end result wasn't what we had thought or hoped, the end result ended up being better anyway. So why torture yourself in the process? I love this quote. It showed up in my Instagram today, and I thought it was so perfect. When you properly handle the process, you fulfill your destiny. That's a quote from John Bevere. I believe that. Again, I've realized there's this common theme that keeps running through a lot of the podcasts about people being in a hurry, about people wanting instant gratification or instant success or instant fame, or people trying to manufacture that they're an expert, or manufacture, they've modeled 2 days and they are calling themselves a supermodel. I mean, everything in between. It's supposed to be a process. If you're dubbing yourself a success before you'd even really begun, what a injustice to yourself. I would rather say I sucked for 10 years and then in the 11th year I started to get it together, because it's that thing of being teachable and wanting to learn and knowing that I don't know what's best for myself. And if the lessons that need to be learned, if I need to pay my dues to get to some place that I never imagined possible, I would much rather pay my dues. I think back to pre-social media, we didn't keep track of everything. Every little step wasn't documented. Sometimes I think why people are in a hurry and don't want to pay their dues is they blast so much out on social media about everything they're going to do or in their process are doing. I'm taking a meeting or I'm doing this, that then guess what's going to happen? People are going to come to you and say, hey, whatever happened with this project, or I saw that you spent a little time in LA modeling. What big things came out of it? And if you can't say, oh, I was there for a month and I did, this top job and that top job, that somehow that is a failure, when it's not. It's time that you spent to lay the foundation to prepare you for the ultimate place of where you're ultimately going to be. Every step was not documented. And I think that the beauty of that is then you have a totality of your effort where you can say, wow, 5 years in, it's amazing what has happened. Or, before I met you, I hadn't traveled or I hadn't experienced this or that, and now look where I'm at. Instead of measuring yourself against other people, assess where you've been. No effort is lost. No waiting period is a wasted period. Sometimes the waiting time is the time for you to learn more about yourself, or to learn what it is to be patient, or to find out something that you didn't know before, so it's never a waste of time. When someone says, I've been modeling for 3 years and this is what's happened, I'll always say, okay, let's stop right there. Modeling for 3 years, or any goal or project or thing that you have, if you've been doing it for 3 years, that's just a blanket statement where I can then say to somebody, okay, but how much of that 3 years were you actually out doing in a marketplace where it could manifest? So even if you've been thinking of it for 3 years or had it as part of your social for 3 years, if you're ultimately not in a market where it can really turn into something, it's not fair to put the 3-year mark on it because you weren't really doing it for 3 years. So in our document, we say, don't weigh and measure. Don't try and determine what happened in a specific block of time, because a career is the totality of a lot or a goal. Or I've been talking about writing a book forever, and I have plenty of book documents on my desktop. I have about 250 pages of book. I'm thankful that it didn't manifest before, because there's so much more to talk about and so much more to write about. There was also a period of 3 years, which I'm just coming out of, that personally in our life, our focus had to be on family, and I had to shelve the book for a little bit. But I don't feel that I'm a failure because of that, because I can open up that document and begin the process all over again, pick up where I left off, and trust that that was part of the journey of me paying my dues to get to the fulfillment of writing the book, which then I know once I have one book under my belt, it'll be so much easier to do the second book and the third book. And paying my dues along the way is something that I'm thankful for. I posted today on social media about 2 things that are really important: be patient and be ready. Being patient is part of the process. Being patient is also really part of paying your dues, because it shows that you have a realistic expectation of, it's okay if it takes time, because if I end up learning in the process and getting to the destination, I have to trust that that's my journey. But the second component of it, which is really important, and again, part of paying your dues, is doing the work in the meantime. What can I do in the meantime to prepare myself? So as I'm moving in the right direction, when that door opens, am I ready for it? And what can I do? What are the daily activities, the monthly activities, to prepare myself for that place that when preparation and opportunity meet, I'm as ready as I can be? And then that will begin a whole other level of the journey of getting there. Paying your dues is not a bad thing. Paying your dues is a really good thing. And on the other side of it, you'll have so much more depth and wisdom and a foundation that's strong to keep achieving that goal that you've accomplished and every other one that you have for the future. So I hope this is encouraging to you. If you feel like the journey's taking a little bit longer than anticipated, that's okay. That's part of what's supposed to happen for you. I hope you have a great week, and I'll talk to you next Monday.